My name's Caleb Morgan. I'm 35 and I make more in a quarter than my parents did in a decade. But you know what still keeps me up some nights? A single sentence my mom said when I was 12. "You're not the golden one, Caleb. Don't make this harder on yourself." I never forgot that. Not when I got my first bonus. Not when I signed the deed to my condo in San Francisco. And definitely not when I mailed the wedding invitations last year. Still clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd show up for me. Just once. I was born and raised in a small town outside Albany, New York. My dad, Rick, worked construction. My mom, Denise, was a church secretary. We weren't poor exactly, but everything felt tight. Money, space, attention, affection. Especially attention. That all went to Sierra, my little sister, who could literally get away with flipping off the priest mid-sermon and still be called our sunshine girl. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one. The one who never asked for seconds. The one who made his own dentist appointments by the time he turned 14. I didn't resent it at first. I figured if I worked hard enough, they'd notice. Maybe not with cake and balloons like Sierra got when she passed pre-algebra, but a simple, "We're proud of you" would have meant everything. Spoiler, it never came. I graduated high school with honors, no party, no dinner out. Sierra got a used Jeep for her birthday 2 weeks later, and I was the one who taught her to parallel park it. When I got into Wharton on partial scholarship, Dad's only comment was, "Sounds expensive. You sure you don't want to try community college first?" Sierra by then had flunked out of her second semester at SUNY Wananta and was back home, figuring things out. No one said a word about that. I stayed quiet, focused, pushed my way through school, internship, sleepless nights, ramen meals. I landed a job with a firm in Manhattan right out of college and spent the next 5 years climbing the greasy pole. Promotions, bonuses, networking events I wasn't even supposed to be in the room for. I earned every inch. And then came the offer in San Francisco. Partner track. Insane salary. Big league territory. When I called home to tell them, Mom's response was, "Well, at least you'll be closer to your Uncle Jim. Maybe he can teach you how to enjoy life a little." At that point, I stopped calling unless it was Christmas or someone's birthday. Even then, it always felt like I was checking in on people who didn't know what I did for a living. Or care. Then I met Jenna. She was unlike anyone I'd dated before. Warm, grounded, whip-smart. A second-grade teacher who could command a room full of screaming kids with just one look. Her family welcomed me from day one. They asked about my job, my hobbies, my dreams, and actually listened. Her dad once said, "Any guy who values his word over his wallet is all right by me." That stuck with me more than anything my father's ever said. Jenna saw what I never admitted out loud. That I still wanted my family to be proud. That somewhere deep down, I believed if I could just prove my worth, monetarily, emotionally, publicly, they'd finally see me. She didn't judge me for it, but she also didn't let me romanticize them. When I proposed to her, she cried and said yes before I finished the question. We talked about having a small wedding, maybe something intimate in Santa Barbara. But then I had the idea, what if I flew everyone out? My parents, Sierra, her husband, their twins, first-class flights, 6 nights in a resort on the coast, a private vineyard tour. The works? Jenna hesitated. "You sure they'd come?" "I don't know," I said. "But if I take away every excuse and they still don't show, then at least I'll know it's not me." I made the calls, booked everything through a trusted travel agent, sent handwritten invites with a note. All expenses covered. Just show up and let's make new memories. It cost me just over $27,000, but I didn't blink. Not because I'm careless with money, but because for once I thought, this could be the thing that resets the story. I imagined my dad walking me down the aisle toward Jenna. I pictured my mom sitting with her arm around Sierra, smiling like she used to in those rare Christmas photos from when I was small and still hopeful. I dared to believe they'd want to be there, not out of obligation, but pride. But pride, I would learn, has never lived in my family the way it should. And what they did with that gift, what they tried to do behind my back, would change the way I see them forever. For the first couple weeks after sending the invitations, things were quiet. Too quiet. I told myself they were probably just sorting out their time off requests or getting excited in their own way. I even pictured my mom and Sierra shopping for dresses, my dad grumbling about the flight time but secretly looking forward to the ocean view. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, I'd finally cracked the code. That money, comfort, and good intentions could bridge 30 years of silence. But then the excuses started rolling in. At first, it was small stuff. My mom texted, "Do we need formal wear?" Rick's not great with packing. Sierra called once, asking if the resort had a kids' menu. Nothing major, just vague, almost distracted. Then came a weird stretch where they didn't respond to anything for nearly a week. I followed up with a call, which went to voicemail. Then another. Then a third. Jenna noticed it too. "You've been checking your phone every 5 minutes," she said one night while we were folding laundry. "What's going on?" I didn't answer right away. I was scared that saying it out loud would make it real. "They're stalling," I finally said. "They're avoiding confirming." Jenna didn't say, "I told you so." She just looked at me like someone who's already picked up the pieces of your heart once and is preparing to do it again. "Have you checked the travel portal?" she asked gently. It hadn't crossed my mind. The bookings were under my account, but I'd given the login to my mom when I sent the itineraries. I opened the site, expecting maybe a request for different dates or seating preferences. What I saw made my stomach drop. There were change requests on the flight bookings for every ticket. Not to Santa Barbara, not to California at all. They'd submitted a request to reroute all 6 flights to Miami. Connecting to the Bahamas, the cruise confirmation was sitting in the trip folder, booked under Sierra's married name. A 10-day all-inclusive cruise departing 2 days before the wedding. I just stared at the screen. I think I forgot how to breathe for a second. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Except I was the one behind the wheel, and they'd yanked it just as we hit the cliff. I didn't tell Jenna right away. I couldn't. I needed to see it with my own eyes first. I booked a red-eye to Albany the next morning, texted my mom, said I'd be in town and wanted to help them with travel prep. Her response, "Busy weekend. Maybe another time?" I went anyway. When I pulled into their driveway that Saturday morning, I saw it. 3 new Samsonite suitcases lined up by the door, a stack of shiny cruise catalogs on the coffee table. My dad came out of the kitchen carrying a pair of flip-flops he definitely wasn't planning to wear in Santa Barbara. They looked shocked to see me, like I'd caught them sneaking out of the back door with the silverware. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. I just said, "So, Bahamas, huh?" My mom froze. My dad sat down slowly like he'd just remembered he had a bad knee. Sierra came in from the hallway a few seconds later, holding a sun hat. When she saw me, she literally dropped it. I turned to her. "You knew. You all knew. And not one of you had the decency to just say it to my face." Sierra was the first to speak. "Caleb, you're blowing this out of proportion. The cruise was a great deal and the kids—" "Don't." I cut her off. "Do not hide behind the kids. This isn't about them. This is about you all choosing a vacation over my wedding and trying to use the tickets I paid for to fund it." "We weren't going to use the tickets," my mom snapped, as if that somehow made it better. "We looked into it. The airline didn't allow it without an upgrade." "Oh, so that's the part that stopped you. Not the theft, not the betrayal, just the price." No one denied it. I stood there in the middle of the living room I grew up in, realizing just how little of me had ever been welcome there. Not even the best version of myself. Polished, generous, successful was enough. And I was done begging to be seen. "I'm canceling your bookings," I said flatly. "Keep the cruise, but don't expect anything else. Not a call, not a photo. You're not coming, and I'm not explaining why." I walked out. No one followed. Back at my hotel, I called Jenna. My voice cracked when I told her what happened, but I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't devastated, but because there was a strange, cold clarity settling in. I'd spent my entire life trying to earn something they never planned to give. That night, I canceled the reservations and called the travel agent to rearrange the guest list. We lost 6 people, but it finally felt like I'd made space for myself. The week after I canceled their bookings, everything felt heavier, like I was walking around with soaked clothes no one else could see. I'd never been so exhausted and so awake at the same time. The world was moving forward. Deadlines at work, final touches for the wedding. But I felt like I was still standing in the doorway of that living room, waiting for someone to stop me. They never did. Jenna didn't push. She didn't try to fix it either. That's what I appreciated most. She just sat next to me on the couch each night, letting the silence be whatever it needed to be. And when I finally told her everything, word for word, from the Bahamas flights to the silence when I walked out, she didn't say, "They didn't mean it." She said, "I'm sorry. That's a brutal thing to survive." Survive. That word stuck with me, because it was something to survive. The realization that your parents and sibling don't see you as someone worth showing up for. That, even when you hand them something perfect on a silver platter, they'd still rather be somewhere else. I tried to keep my head in the wedding. We still had vendors to finalize, a seating chart to redo, floral changes to make since my mom's favorite lilies no longer mattered. But every time I sat down to do it, I'd just stall. It was like I couldn't imagine the day anymore. Not without that little kid version of me still hoping they'd come around. One night, Jenna found me in the kitchen, sitting on the floor with a half-open box of RSVP cards in my lap. "Do you want to postpone?" she asked gently. I looked up at her, startled. "What?" "The wedding," she said, sliding down next to me. "Do you want to postpone it? If it feels too heavy now, we can wait." Her voice wasn't accusing. It wasn't scared. She wasn't thinking about deposits or guest lists or dress fittings. She was thinking about me, the man she agreed to marry, not the ceremony he'd built. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I don't want to postpone. I need to figure out how to let go of something I've been chasing my whole life, and I don't even know what that thing is anymore." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Maybe you already let go," she whispered, "and now you're just learning how to live without it." That hit me hard, because she was right. It wasn't just that my family chose not to come. It was that, in their silence and selfishness, they finally made me see something I'd been refusing to accept. That I was never the problem. No matter how much I achieved, how generous I was, how much space I gave them, they were never going to love me the way I needed. And that wasn't going to change with first-class tickets or beachfront resorts. So I made a decision. If this wedding wasn't going to be about chasing their approval anymore, then it was going to be about us. About Jenna. About the people who showed up without needing to be bribed, convinced, or begged. I threw myself into planning again. But this time, with different eyes. We reworked the seating chart so it felt fuller. We upgraded the menu. Nothing extravagant, just personal. Jenna's aunt made her signature cornbread for the reception, and I called an old friend from Wharton who agreed to fly in last minute just to give a toast. We added a small tribute table near the ceremony with framed photos. Not of lost loved ones, but of the people who had actually been there for us. Jenna's 4th grade teacher. My first boss from Manhattan who always told me I was meant for more. Even a picture of Jenna's dog, Baxter, who passed away the same year we met. The day before we flew out, I got a text from Sierra. "Saw you canceled the flights. So I guess you're serious about cutting us off. Just know the kids were really looking forward to the beach. You're punishing them, not us." I didn't reply. Because I wasn't punishing anyone. I was finally choosing myself. And as we landed in Santa Barbara the next afternoon, with the ocean stretching out beyond the hills and Jenna's hand gripping mine, something inside me loosened. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and was finally ready to exhale. If you'd told me 6 months ago that I'd be walking down the aisle without a single blood relative in attendance and somehow feel more seen than I ever had in my life, I wouldn't have believed you. But that's exactly what happened. Santa Barbara greeted us with its usual calm: soft breeze, lazy palm trees, and that golden California light that somehow makes everything feel cinematic. We arrived 2 days before the wedding, checked into the small Ocean View Inn we'd rented out for guests, and I let Jenna take my hand and lead me out of my own head. I wasn't numb anymore. I wasn't angry either, not in the way I expected to be. It was quieter now. Like I had shed an old skin I'd outgrown without even realizing it. The morning of the rehearsal dinner, I got a call from the front desk. "There's a Ms. Margaret Traynor here to see you?" the concierge asked. My brain stalled for a second. Margaret Traynor was the assistant dean at Wharton. Retired now, but back then, she was the one who pulled me aside sophomore year and said, "You don't just survive here, Caleb. You lead." I hadn't seen her in nearly a decade. I rushed down, still in a t-shirt and damp hair, and there she was. Same sharp eyes, same charcoal gray blazer. She hugged me without hesitation. "Jenna reached out a few weeks ago," she said, smiling. "Said you were getting married and your family wouldn't be attending. I figured someone should." I was too stunned to speak. She squeezed my arm. "Don't look so shocked. You made more of an impression than you realize. I didn't have a son, Caleb. But if I had, I'd have wanted him to turn out like you." That moment, that was the first time I cried during the wedding weekend. Right there in the lobby, no shame. And she wasn't the only one. By the time dinner rolled around, our guest list, which had once felt like a casualty of rejection, had turned into something intimate and deeply real. Jenna's cousins, my college roommates, her old coworker who drove 6 hours just to help us string lights on the garden terrace. People who'd shown up, not because they were bound by blood or guilt or expectation, but because they wanted to be part of our life. We shared stories over dinner, toasted with cheap champagne, and I noticed something I hadn't expected. I wasn't checking the door. I wasn't imagining my dad stumbling in last minute or my mom waiting for some cinematic reunion. I didn't want them there. And that absence? It didn't feel like a loss anymore. It felt like clarity. That night, as Jenna and I sat on our tiny patio watching the waves roll in under moonlight, she pulled out her phone and handed it to me. "I wasn't sure if I should show you," she said, "but I think you deserve to know." It was a message from Sierra. "Heard Margaret Traynor's at your wedding. Is this some stunt? Mom said you're trying to humiliate us. No one in the family understands what you're doing. You look ridiculous." I read it twice, then again. Jenna waited, silent. I handed the phone back. "They think the worst of me, even when I'm doing the best I've ever done," I said. "And the irony? They're the ones who look small now, not me." Jenna nodded. "You don't have to respond." "I won't," I said, "but I will post a few photos tomorrow, not for revenge, just to celebrate what was real." The wedding itself was indescribable, not because of some dramatic gesture or luxury detail, but because of how complete it felt. Jenna looked stunning in a champagne-colored dress with lace sleeves. Her father walked her down the aisle holding back tears, and her mom held my hand before the ceremony and whispered, "You're part of this family now. We're lucky." And I believed her. During my vows, I said this: I spent most of my life thinking I had to earn love by working harder, giving more, becoming someone worth choosing. But today, I stand here knowing that love isn't earned. It's given. Freely. Boldly. And I will spend the rest of my life giving that kind of love to you, Jenna. As I looked out at the faces smiling back, people from every part of my life who had chosen to show up, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Peace. Not triumph. Not vengeance, just peace. That night, we danced barefoot on the grass under string lights. We ate cake with our hands. We sang off key and didn't care. And when Jenna leaned into me and whispered, "You did it, you know," I asked, Did what? She smiled. You broke the cycle. 2 days after the wedding, as Jenna and I were sitting on the deck of a small cottage just north of Carmel, our short post-wedding getaway before flying to Greece for the real honeymoon, I posted a single photo. It was nothing flashy, just a candid shot someone took of us at sunset. I'm holding Jenna's heels in one hand. She's barefoot in the grass, leaning into me, and we're laughing. You can see the lights twinkling in the background, the table's still full of people, wine glasses raised mid-toast. The caption was simple. We didn't need everyone, just the right ones. Thank you to those who showed up for real. No tags, no anger, just truth. I didn't expect the fallout. Honestly, I thought maybe a handful of friends would like it. Maybe Aunt Doreen from Jenna's side would comment something sweet. But within 24 hours, the post had over 1,000 likes and dozens of shares. Turns out, Margaret Traynor had reposted it, writing this in the caption, "This is what choosing your peace looks like. Proud to know this man. His story deserves more than silence." Suddenly, people I hadn't spoken to in years were messaging me. Old classmates, former coworkers, even 2 of my old professors. One of them wrote, "I wish I had your courage. I kept inviting my parents, hoping they'd change. They never did." It was surreal. But what happened next? That's what I didn't see coming. About 3 days later, I got a call from a family friend, someone I hadn't spoken to since high school. She was quiet at first, then said, "Hey, I think you should know what's going around back home." Apparently, Sierra had tried to do damage control. She and my parents had told everyone in our hometown that I'd excluded them from the wedding, that I'd gone Hollywood and left my family behind for social climbing and attention. But the internet doesn't work the way it did in 1997. Screenshots of my post, Margaret's endorsement, and even photos from the wedding had made their way back to folks who remembered me. People who knew what kind of kid I was, what kind of adult I'd become. And suddenly, the narrative didn't hold. Someone I barely knew from high school messaged me. "Hey man, I saw what your sister said online, but then I saw your post and... that photo? You looked genuinely happy, like you didn't need to pretend anymore." That was the thing. I wasn't pretending anymore. The final crack came when Jenna's uncle, who happens to sit on the board of a private scholarship fund in upstate New York, reached out and said he was reconsidering a grant he'd been planning to offer through my father's company. Turns out Dad had pitched himself as a family-first man running a mentorship program. Uncle Paul said, "If he couldn't even show up for his own son, I'm not sure I believe anything else he says." And just like that, the cracks in their version of the truth started widening. Eventually, Sierra reached out again, this time through a mutual cousin. The message was short. "You embarrassed us. I hope you're happy." I didn't reply, because I was happy. Not because they were hurting, but because they were finally forced to carry the truth they created. And me? I was free from it. We flew to Greece a few days later, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. I didn't refresh my phone every hour hoping for a message. I didn't play out fake arguments in my head. I just existed. Fully. The strangest part of it all? I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt sad, but not in the way I used to. Not the longing kind. It was a cleaner sadness, like mourning a version of myself I finally didn't need to keep alive. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's this. Sometimes the hardest people to let go of are the ones you spent your whole life trying to impress. But walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you finally understand what you're worth. If any part of this story hit home for you, I'd love to hear it. Maybe you've had to set hard boundaries, or maybe you're still figuring it out. Either way, feel free to share in the comments. No judgment here. And if stories like this help you feel less alone, stick around. I've got more to tell. Thanks for walking through this one with me.